When life feels overwhelming, it's easy to believe that your problems are too big to handle. The fear creeps in, the anxiety builds, and suddenly, the challenges you face seem like towering giants. But here's the truth that fear tries to hide. God is bigger than your problems. Your struggles may feel heavy, but they are not heavier than His strength. The situations that seem impossible to you are not impossible for Him. What's overwhelming for you is not overwhelming for God. He's not intimidated by your fears, confused by your circumstances, or limited by your obstacles. Think about the ocean. To us, it's vast and powerful, with waves that can crush and currents that can pull us under. But to God, the ocean is like a drop in His hand, measured, controlled, and small compared to His greatness. That's how He sees your problems, not to minimize what you're feeling, but to remind you that nothing is too big for Him. Your problems may seem massive. The financial struggles, the health issues, the broken relationships, the silent battles in your heart, they feel like mountains. But the Bible says that with faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Not because you're strong enough, but because God is. Fear says, "This is too much for me." Faith says, "But it's not too much for God." Worry says, "I don't see a way out." Hope says, "God is the way." You might not see the solution yet, and that's okay. You're not meant to have all the answers. You're meant to trust the one who does. Your job isn't to figure everything out. It's to take your burdens, your fears, your doubts, and lay them at His feet. So today, if your problems feel too big, shift your focus. Stop looking at how massive the mountain is and start looking at the God who moves mountains. He's bigger, He's stronger, and He's with you right here, right now. You're not facing this alone. You never have been, and you never will be. Sometimes life feels like a battle you can't win. The problems pile up, one after another, until it feels like you're drowning, gasping for air under the weight of worry, fear, and uncertainty. But here's the truth your heart needs to hear. God is not just bigger than your problems. He's already victorious over them. When you're in the middle of the struggle, it's easy to forget that the battle isn't yours to fight alone. You weren't meant to carry every burden, fix every issue, or control every outcome. That's not your job. That's God's. Your role isn't to have all the answers. Your role is to trust the one who does. Think about David facing Goliath. To everyone else, Goliath was an unbeatable giant. But to David, Goliath was just an obstacle standing between him and God's promise. David didn't rely on his own strength. He trusted in the God who had been with him all along. The size of the giant didn't matter because David knew the size of his God. Fear says, "This problem is too big." Faith says, "My God is bigger." Worry says, "What if I fail?" Hope says, "God has already made a way." Your problems may feel massive, but they are not bigger than God's power, His grace, or His love for you. You are not fighting alone. God is in the details, working behind the scenes, arranging things in ways you can't see yet. Just because you don't see the solution doesn't mean He's not working. When the waves of life feel too strong, remember this. The same God who calms the storm with a word is the same God who holds your heart. He doesn't panic when you face struggles. He doesn't get overwhelmed when life feels out of control. He is your refuge, your strength, your ever-present help in times of trouble. So today, if your problems feel bigger than you can handle, that's okay. They probably are, but they're not bigger than God. Shift your focus from the size of the problem to the size of your God. Because the moment you do, you'll realize something powerful. The problem may be big, but your God is bigger, and He's already working it out for your good. When you're staring at a problem that feels too big to handle, It's easy to feel small, powerless, and overwhelmed. The anxiety creeps in, your heart races, and the what-if questions play on repeat. But here's what fear doesn't want you to remember. God isn't asking you to be strong enough to handle everything. He's asking you to trust that He already is. God is not surprised by your problems. He's not pacing the floor of heaven, wondering how to fix your situation. The things that catch you off guard have never caught Him off guard. The problems that seem impossible to you are opportunities for Him to show His power. Where you see obstacles, God sees open doors. Where you see defeat, God sees victory waiting to unfold. Think about the Israelites standing at the edge of the Red Sea. Behind them, Pharaoh's army was closing in. In front of them, an impossible barrier of water. Fear said, "We're trapped." But God said, "Stand still and watch what I will do." And with one command, the sea parted. What seemed like the end was just the beginning of a miracle. Fear says, "There's no way out." Faith says, "God will make a way where there is no way." Worry says, "I'm not strong enough." Hope says, "God's strength is made perfect in my weakness." You might be in a situation right now where you don't see a way forward. The path feels blocked, the walls too high, the weight too heavy. But just because you don't see a way doesn't mean there isn't one. God specializes in impossible situations. He's the waymaker, the mountain mover, the miracle worker. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to know the next 10 steps. You just need to trust the one who does. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight harder, but to surrender deeper. To lay your burdens at His feet and say, "I can't, but I know you can." So today, if your problems feel overwhelming, take a deep breath. You don't have to carry it all. You were never meant to. God is bigger than your fear, your doubt, your obstacles, and your pain. He's already working behind the scenes, making a way, opening doors, and holding you steady, right here, right now. You are not alone. You never were, and you never will be. When problems feel overwhelming, they have a way of shrinking our perspective. All we can see is the struggle, the pain, the weight we're carrying. It's like standing too close to a wall. You can't see anything beyond it. But what if you stepped back? What if you shifted your focus? Not on the size of the problem, but on the size of your God. God is bigger than the storm you're facing. He's not limited by your circumstances, your mistakes, or even your doubts. The problem may seem huge to you, but to God, it's not insurmountable. What's impossible for you is simple for Him. He holds the universe in His hands, and that includes your heart, your fears, and your future. Think about the story of Daniel in the lion's den. The situation was terrifying, surrounded by lions, no way out, no human solution. But Daniel didn't focus on the lions. He focused on the Lion of Judah. The problem didn't disappear, but God's presence made Daniel unshaken in the middle of it. The same God who shut the mouths of lions is the same God who's with you right now. Fear says, "This is the end." Faith says, "This is where God begins." Worry says, "There's no hope left." Hope says, "God's not done yet." When you fix your eyes on the problem, it grows. But when you fix your eyes on God, your faith grows. The problem may not disappear overnight, but your heart begins to change. The fear loses its grip. The anxiety starts to fade. Not because the situation is easy, but because you've remembered who's holding it. And here's the most powerful truth. God isn't just bigger than your problems. He's bigger within you. His Spirit lives in you, giving you strength when you're weak, peace when you're anxious, and hope when you feel lost. You're not facing this alone. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is living inside of you. So today, if the problem feels too big, shift your focus. Don't just tell God how big your problem is. Tell your problem how big your God is. Stand firm, not because the struggle isn't real, but because God is real. His promises are true, His power is greater, and His love for you is unshakable. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And no problem is bigger than the God who fights for you. Sometimes, your problems feel like they're closing in from every direction. The pressure builds, the fear grows, and you start to wonder, how much more can I take? It's in those moments when everything feels too heavy that you need to hear this truth. God is bigger than your problems, and His strength is made perfect in your weakness. You were never meant to carry the weight of life alone. God isn't asking you to be strong enough. He's asking you to trust that He already is. The things that seem impossible to you are not impossible for Him. He doesn't get overwhelmed by the same things that overwhelm you. Where you see limits, God sees opportunities. Where you see dead ends, He makes a way. Think about the walls of Jericho. To the Israelites, those walls were impossible, thick, towering, unbreakable. But God didn't tell them to tear the walls down with their strength. He told them to walk, to trust, to believe. And with a simple shout, those walls crumbled. Not because of human power, but because of God's power. Fear says, this is impossible. Faith says, nothing is impossible with God. Worry says, I'm not strong enough. Hope says, God's strength is more than enough. The enemy wants you to focus on the size of your problem, to believe that you're stuck, defeated, and alone. But you're not. You are never alone. God is with you, and He's not distant or disconnected. He's right there in the middle of your mess, working behind the scenes, fighting battles you can't even see. And here's the thing, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need the perfect plan, the right words, or all the answers. You just need to take the next step in faith, even if it's shaky, even if it's small. God isn't asking for perfection. He's asking for your trust. So today, if your heart feels heavy and your problems feel too big, shift your focus. Look up, not at the mountain, but at the one who moves mountains. Speak life over your fear. Declare hope over your doubt. You may feel weak, but His power is made perfect right there in your weakness. God is bigger than your past, stronger than your fear, greater than your obstacles, and closer than your next breath. You are not alone. You are not defeated. And this problem? It's not the end of your story. It's the place where God's power will shine the brightest. At the end of the day, when the noise fades and you're left alone with your thoughts, it's easy for your problems to feel overwhelming. The weight of what you're facing can seem too heavy, the fears too loud, and the doubts too real. But here's the truth that stands unshaken. God is bigger than your problems, always. Your circumstances may change, but God's power never does. The mountains you're facing may seem immovable, but they are nothing compared to the God who created them. The storms may rage, but they don't intimidate the one who speaks and calms the sea. He's not just aware of your struggles. He's in the middle of them with you. Think about Jesus calming the storm. The disciples were terrified, convinced they were going to drown. But Jesus was right there in the boat with them. The storm didn't wake Him. Their fear did. And with just a few words, "Peace, be still," the winds and waves obeyed. That's the power of the God who is with you now. Fear says, "This storm will destroy me." Faith says, "God is in my boat, and He's greater than the storm." Worry says, "I don't know how this will end." Hope says, God is already in my tomorrow. You might not know how the story will unfold, but you can trust the one who's writing it. God sees the bigger picture, the parts you can't see yet. He's not just working on your problem. He's working in your heart, growing your faith, strengthening your spirit, and preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to pretend you're okay when you're not. God isn't disappointed by your fear or your doubts. He meets you right where you are, whispers, "I've got you," and holds you through it all. So today, if your problems feel too big, lift your eyes. Not because the problem isn't real, but because God is more real. Not because the fear isn't loud, but because His voice is louder. You are not alone. You are not defeated. You are held by the hands that form the stars, the same hands that hold your heart. And no matter how big your problem is, God is always bigger, always faithful, always with you.